Hi everyone, welcome. Happy Thursday. Super excited to be with you on another amazing Power to Fly Chat and Learn. My name's Meg. I'm part of Power to Fly's virtual hosting team, and I'm really excited to be hosting this event with two amazing team members from the Waters Corporation today. Before I kind of jump in and introduce them to you, I would love to highlight for you just a couple housekeeping items, just real quick, ways you can participate, all that kind of stuff. So as you can see on the screen, participation is huge for us. We want to make sure that if you took time out of your day to spend with Power to Fly, that you really enjoy the time that you spend with us, and it's well worth the effort. So we want to make sure that you are free to participate in as many ways as you'd like. You can turn your cameras on if you want to share your smiling faces safely with everyone. You're more than welcome to do that. Messy buns, non-traditional workspaces, furry coworkers, all of this is welcome and encouraged. If you don't want to turn your cameras on, not a problem, no pressure, I totally get it. If you do want to participate, you can do it in a couple ways. You can come off mute to ask a question or add a comment. If you do that, you are going to show up on the live recording of today's event. So if you have any privacy concerns, you won't show up as long as you don't come off mute. You can also, if you want to, stay off the recording, you can put any questions you have into the Zoom group chat. And if you have any further privacy concerns, you really don't want anyone to know you're here, that's okay. You just, if you have questions or comments, just DM them to me, and that way I can raise them and keep you anonymous. I see we've got people joining us from Oslo, Norway, Connecticut, all over the place, so very cool. Like I said, the session is being recorded today. So if you don't feel like you have to take notes, and if you miss something that someone says, don't stress about it. In 1 to 2 days, everyone that registered for today's session, whether you stay for 5 minutes, the full 60, or you registered for this knowing you maybe couldn't make it and you're watching this future recording, hi, from the past, everybody that registered is going to get a link in about 1 to 2 business days. We'll email you a rewatch link to where you can check out the recording of today's event. Now, if Bella or Hari say something that is just mind-blowing and you have to share it right now, you do not have to wait. You can head on over to our YouTube channel. We're live streaming this there as we speak. And you can head over to our YouTube channel, and usually within about 5 to 15 minutes of the end of today's session, the video will be posted up on our Chat and Learns page, and you can share it with whoever you like. As we're going through, please feel free to take pictures or video. We love sharing the love on social media, spreading the word about Power to Fly, and making our resources more accessible to more people. So please feel free to take photos or video, tag us as we go. Like I said, I'm going to put the links in the chat so you have some text to go with this. But we are at Power to Fly, not just on YouTube, but we are at Power to Fly on, I think, like 5 different social media channels. So like YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I also recommend you follow us on one or another, many of those channels. It's a great way to stay updated about upcoming events with Power to Fly, new content that we're putting together every day. You can see stuff from our blog posts. You can see new jobs that we're highlighting, all kinds of stuff. So definitely take a look at those. Like I said, if you do, we'll dive in a little bit more into the participation angle in just a moment. But before we do, I am really excited to introduce you to our speakers today. First up, we have Bella Karit. Bella is an experienced software engineering leader with a proven track record of developing high-performing teams. She started her career as a software engineer, and she's held various leadership positions in software development organizations for the last 15+ years. Bella led successful software delivery for critical and complex programs. She currently works with the teams delivering a strategic cloud-based IoT solution. Bella holds a bachelor's in science degree in mathematics from Hebrew University in Jerusalem and an MBA from Bentley University. So welcome, Bella. We're so excited to have you back. Joining Bella today is going to be one of her coworkers, Hari Namduri. Hari is a strategic, customer-focused product and technology leader with a passion for digital products, technology, and innovation. He has 20+ years of experience positioning companies for high-impact transformation and profitable growth by launching cloud-native, innovative product and platform solutions that deliver competitive advantage and improve customer satisfaction. So welcome, Hari. We're so excited to have you too.
Hey, thank you.
Is there anything either of you would like to add to those amazing intros before we jump into the questions today?
No, again, just to kind of put a little bit more perspective, I myself grew in my career through starting as a software engineer, coming out of college, working for IBM, and kind of done the software engineer role for more than a little over a decade before I kind of eventually switched over into leadership role. So I can definitely relate to some of the challenges being a software engineer.
Oh, for sure. And Bella, I know that you've shared your background with us on a previous chat. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we jump in?
No, we should jump in. Amazing
All right.
questions.
I love it. So obviously Bella and Hari are here as part of the as part of the Waters team in partnership with Power to Fly. I'm sharing a link in the chat right now to where you can check out the Waters company page on powertofly.com. It's going to look much like what you see here. Let's see, currently there are 229 open roles as opposed to the 218 you see on my screen grab right here. But one thing I want to highlight for you is that you can check out more company info here. You can take a look at both upcoming events that they're participating in, as well as past events they've done with us. So Bella's chat will be on that events tab as well. And obviously you can check out their open roles there. At the top of this page, there's going to be a big pink follow button. Clicking that button does a couple really great things for you. If you are at all interested in working with Waters Corporation, either now because you're actively looking, or if you're just kind of curious about them and want them to stay on your radar, clicking that follow button basically works like your friend at the company. It tells the Waters Corporation that you are really interested in working with them even before you fill out an application. It also pings, alerts you when they post new roles. So it's a really good way to stay updated, especially if you really like what Waters sounds like, what the company culture is like, all that kind of stuff, but nothing really suits you right now, or you're just not actively looking at the moment. It's a really great way to make sure that you stand out if you're actively job seeking, but also a great way to keep tabs. So I definitely, make sure you take advantage of that feature as part of powerfly.com. All right, so as we jump into our questions today, I just want to highlight for everybody, especially if you registered, a while ago for this chat, or if you're joining us from the future and don't necessarily know what we're going to cover. So these are some of the principal themes we've developed for the day's conversation. Now, we put these together via conversations with Bella and Hari, as well as reviewing the questions that y'all submitted in advance of today's session, which were amazing. So thank you. Thank you to our attendees for that. Now, we're going to try and go over these themes based on the questions you submitted. We compiled them. We tried to arrange them into a conversational format. But if you took time out of your day to spend with us and be here live, you should get prime treatment. So if you have questions that occur to you that Bella or Hari says something that you'd like to know more about, or if we cover one of your questions, but maybe we're not like getting quite the right take on it, or you want to add more context to the question we're going over, please feel free to participate. Like I said, you can come off mute. Try not to interrupt either our speakers or any other attendees. Me, you can interrupt because I get paid to fill the silence. So please feel free to interrupt me to get your questions asked. But yeah, we're going to try and go, over these, the following kind of, areas, but please feel like you can drive the day's conversation. If there's something you want to know, the most guaranteed way to get your question answered is to come off mute and ask, or put it in the Zoom chat, or DM me. So what we're going to try and cover today are some of the skills that are necessary to succeed in today's technological organizations. We're going to talk a little bit about what it means to be a servant leader and how that idea, how that really impacts both your working life as well as people around you, as well as the role of soft skills and why they are just as important as technical skills for your career development, as well as kind of like the majority of your life. Really, soft skills get you through a lot of things. So to jump into the conversation, or jump into some of the questions that we were asked today, let me focus here on our speakers. Awesome. Let's start with this question I thought was kind of interesting. This person had wanted to know, what is the best skill that you've developed that helps you to excel at Waters? Now, I think this is kind of a two-part question, right? Because sometimes like your favorite skill or the best skill you've learned might not be the best one that helps you succeed at Waters, but it's still invaluable. So I'd like to hear from both of you, if possible, what you would identify as this best skill.
So I can go first in this. So I think of self-awareness and empathy. I think those are the best skills that can help you excel at Waters or any other organization. It's definitely something that could be developed for both of those, even though it's hard.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, it's one of those things that sounds very easy, but it's difficult. They're both difficult skills to develop. Hari, would you agree? Is this something a similar answer to what you were going to give, or do you have another skill that's kind of top of mind?
So I would agree with that in terms of the empathy part of it, right? Which is, again, at the end of the day, no matter which organization you're part of, you're still dealing with people, and being empathetic and really understanding the other person's perspective and really kind of making sure that you're able to internalize and react to it accordingly is probably a critical skill, no matter where you go. And probably for some of the folks that are on the chat here who are parents, probably they know it firsthand that that's something that kind of applies to you even while you're kind of dealing with your kids. So to me, that's one. And then the other aspect is actually active listening, right? Again, when I say active listening, it's not just about hearing what the other person is saying, but really paying attention, understanding where they're coming from, understanding the context behind it, and making sure that you're able to kind of react based after you internalize, rather than thinking about solutions as you're hearing that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So to me, those are a couple of things that have helped me immensely in my career. And I'm sure probably would be applicable to pretty much anyone in any organization or in every walk of life for that matter.
No, I think that's a really good point. That active listening is very difficult. A lot of people think that they can do it or whatever, but like it's an art, honestly. It's one of those things that is an invaluable skill, and it takes a long time to develop. So yeah, thanks for highlighting that. So the title of this whole event is talking about how to achieve that Rockstar status. Let's talk a little bit about how each of you really defines that Rockstar status in engineering, and maybe a little bit of like how we can kind of work towards it.
So Bella, you want to go first?
Yeah, no, I can do it. So yeah, that was actually, all the questions were quite amazing. So I liked this one too. So it made me think a little bit about this. So the way I think about rock stars in software engineering, to me, the rock stars are engineers, testers, analysts that love problem solving. They solve issues. They write quality code. They are generous with sharing their knowledge with others and work with different folks across the organization to share what they know. They make good on their promises to deliver the working code. And I think to the second part of this question, how we can work towards it, I think there are a number of skills that could really be helpful, to take this further, where you probably want to do better and learn more about breaking down, planning, and estimating your work, even though that usually sounds trivial and simple, but it's really, it gets complex when you work on complex projects and programs. Because one of the most important things not to forget is actually not just to write code, but also to set expectation for other teams, for the rest of the business. And that's where it gets super tricky, when people know that they can trust, they promise, and you can deliver on your promise. So that's sort of my take on that.
No, you're right. I mean, they're kind of the things that they're building blocks, and they seem or sound kind of basic, but like they really are the foundation of everything else. And if you don't know how to necessarily manage your time effectively, or if you aren't great at like reprioritizing or keeping people informed of where you are, that communication breakdown can cause all kinds of other issues that wouldn't be a problem if you didn't have this stumbling block early on. Ari, what about you? What do you think of when you think about being like a rock star software engineer?
Sure. So again, I think Bella kind of highlighted some of the core aspects that she kind of views as the things that you would need in a rockstar software engineer, right? So I'll kind of try to answer that question a little bit differently in terms of what are some of the things that you can do to kind of get there. So I'll probably try and focus on that part of the question a little bit. So first and foremost, again, to me, I kind of look at a rockstar engineer, software engineer having 5 key attributes. Again, it could be 5, 10, but at least from my perspective, I'm kind of trying to box it within 5. And the first one is, again, you are a rock star engineer, and reality is no organization is going to have you work in a silo. You are always going to be working as part of a team and making sure that you are contributing to the overall success of the team, overall success of the organization. And to me, one of the core fundamental skills we as software engineers need to focus on is building relationships, building lasting relationships, really being able to kind of lean on other people, being able to kind of get help when we need, or being able to provide help when we need to, and being able to tap into people to kind of help us get through some challenging situations. The other aspect, again, being a software engineer, again, this is probably one of the most, if not the fastest evolving field out there in terms of technologies and trends and whatnot. And again, you wake up tomorrow morning, you'll probably find 2 more new languages, 2 more new tools or skill solutions or whatnot. So to me, someone who is on a path of continuous learning, you need to kind of set aside some specific amount of time or make it part of your daily habits that you are focusing on learning something new every day. Because again, with the way the industry is changing, it's not like the fundamentals are changing, but it's more around how you apply those fundamentals to solve new problems on a day-to-day basis. The next one I would probably say is seems pretty basic and seems more like common sense, but probably one of the most difficult things for us as software engineers to do is asking the question, why am I building this? What is the problem that I'm trying to solve? And what is the customer perspective or the user perspective? And really trying to understand that, because once you kind of understand and internalize that, that really helps you hit the mark in terms of delivering the right solution, right? And again, the other aspect, as I said, like you are part of a team. Always look at helping other team members and putting the team ahead of your own individual accomplishments or successes. Again, I understand we're all human beings and we want to kind of get that sense of achievement and accomplishment individually. But if you're really looking at trying to become a rock star engineer, again, reality is you're trying to put the team and enabling your team to succeed. And eventually things will work out, trust me. And lastly, something that is probably near and dear to most of the software engineers is, as you're looking at working on a piece of code, a solution, a process, whatever you find, try and ensure that things are left in a better state than when you found them. Right? Again, it doesn't necessarily have to be perfect. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100% right, but just make every attempt that you can to make things a little better. Right? So that's kind of my perspective on some of the things that we could do as software engineers to kind of get to that rockstar status.
I absolutely love that. I mean, I learned it in Girl Scouts as the campsite role, but it's honestly like, it's so applicable to so many situations. Really just try and leave it better than you found it, or at least not worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, just as a personal curiosity, when you talk about learning something new every day, how often would you say that you are learning something new, and how often is it really either learning more about something you thought you knew, like already knew how to do, or brushing back up on skills you haven't used in a while? Is that just as important, or is it more about growing your knowledge base than anything else?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? So growing your knowledge base is one aspect of it, one part of it. That said, on a day-to-day basis, as software engineers, we face multiple different challenges or problems that we need to solve, right? And traditionally, based on the specific skill set of the individual, they might be able to kind of come up with solutions in a specific tool, programming language or whatnot that they're comfortable with. However, the one ask or the challenge that I have for the audience here is that might solve the problem right away. However, in the context of your continuous learning, try to explore solving that problem through a different approach, a different tool, different solution. That will kind of force you to put it in the context of a problem that you have solved, that you have seen, but also try and learn about something new, something different, and apply and see what the result is. Because that is probably what is going to give you the best way of evaluating and learning new things. Because learning a language, yeah, we've all probably done it. We could learn a bunch of things around Hello Java or JavaScript functions or whatnot, but applying that to a real world problem that you have solved in a area that you're comfortable with and exploring it in that context definitely helps open up quite a few options. And then again, there is the usual stuff around your blog sites, your technical strategy documents out there, and developer forums that you can kind of really get into. But really, as you're kind of trying to build out a learning, again, what I would suggest is build out a learning plan. Think of some of the things that are applicable near and dear to your heart, applicable in the context of the organization or the industry that you're in, and build out a learning path. You can't necessarily learn everything overnight, but just kind of work through that path, and eventually you will start figuring out where you want to go next once you kind of get into that as a habit.
I love that idea of starting with something that really speaks to you or something that you're passionate about, and then trying to find that common through line that would connect it to what you're doing. Because personally, I find it a lot easier to learn something if I have a personal interest in it to start with. There's been like Google click holes that I've fallen into, and 3 hours later, I know way more info than I did. And yet the same amount of time spent on certain college classes, I did not learn anywhere near as much, despite the studying. So yeah, I think that's great. We have some questions in the chat that people are asking, kind of like, maybe do you have any advice on like how to go about picking up these places where you can learn more things? Is it just enough to be like reading blogs and articles, or should you be looking in other different places depending on maybe the skill you want to learn?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Meg, from Anna, I guess. So I think there are different ways sort of to skin the cat, as I would call it, and there are different types of learning that everybody does. So I don't think it's super prescriptive, but few different ways to do that. So some learning that we do definitely is sort of ad hoc, like while we're working on something, like Hari was saying, think of a bigger picture, think of how you could solve sort of certain set of problems rather than sort of be more tactical. Can you think more strategically? Some learning is sort of ad hoc on, you just read the blogs, or you subscribe to certain sort of online publication or paper publication for that matter. However, sometimes you kind of want to have a more structured learning. You do want to take a class. You do want to sort of maybe consider attending a conference. You do want to attend a webinar, or sort of to hear, to subscribe to somebody's YouTube channel for learning. So I think there are different types of learnings that you kind of want to have under your sort of tool belt, so you can apply all of this, and sort of as long as you are sort of as long as you're purposeful about this, as long as you remember to seek the information out, I think that would be good.
Okay, we've also have a follow-up question from Iris. Iris says, regarding learning, how do you balance learning technologies that you're passionate about with those that are marketable? For example, I love functional programming, so I'm learning Haskell, but there aren't a lot of Haskell jobs out there. And apologies for my pronunciation. I've been told that I butcher some of the names of these skills or these languages. Apologies up front.
So that's a really interesting question, Iris, right? In terms of trying to focus on what is marketable versus what is a passion of yours. And again, I think it again goes back to figuring out or finding the right balance in terms of really thinking about as a software engineer. Again, ultimately, if the goal is to kind of get a job, then there is obviously an opportunity for you to, or a need for you to kind of learn that specific programming language and make yourself more marketable, right? So that's one aspect of it. That said, if you're passionate about some of these things, try to look for companies where they actually kind of are doing things that are closer and more aligned with your passions. And again, you might be able to get in with your specific marketable skills, but if you are in the right organization that kind of aligns with your passions and beliefs, then I'm sure you can actually look at expanding your horizons and looking at other opportunities within the organization. And again, to a large extent, some of those things that we talked about around what are the things that you need to do to become a rockstar engineer are absolutely applicable in the context of making the transition, right? That said, again, I'm not necessarily going to tell you that that is an easy choice to make. I get it, but at the end of the day, that's at least my perspective. I don't know, Bella, did you have a different perspective?
Yeah, I wanted to throw another thing. So I completely agree with everything you said, Hari. I just want to throw a couple more quick things. First of all, Iris, so it's great that you're passionate about a technology. So I think even if you sort of for you to invest in that and to sort of demonstrate that you're passionate about technology, I think that also adds to sort of your marketable skills, as Hari put it. For example, at Waters, I just want to sort of plug our sort of Waters ways. That what we do here at informatics organization, we encourage and ask everyone that works in informatics, which is part of our software development organization, to spend 10% of people's time to learn new technologies of their choice. We don't necessarily instruct or prescript, so people can sort of follow their passion. So if there is something that is somewhat different than what they do day in and day out, they do still have outlet to work on projects, and we encourage sort of collaborations with other departments to work on those. So that way, sort of people somehow can balance their passion for other technologies that they don't necessarily get to use then and out because of whatever they have to do for their day-to-day jobs.
Yeah, I absolutely love that, because I mean, I'm obviously not a software engineer or software developer, but I know what it feels like to have something that you like to do, but it's not maybe really connected to what the business model is. And Hari, you make a really good point that it might be a situation where maybe this is a place for you to develop your skills and keep learning so that you can pursue a company that maybe aligns more closely with your passions. But yeah, it's also definitely an opportunity to learn something outside of your comfort zone, because if it wasn't for this, kind of nudge, or like, here's where the need really lies, you might not ever touch that, you might not have sought out that learning to begin with, but it could be very, very valuable for you. So yeah, I absolutely love that. Let's see, I want to make sure we're not missing any questions here.
I think I have a question about the software engineering. So
yeah. Anne says, I'm a software tester and I want to know about software engineering. Can I take a certificate somewhere in software engineering? Do I need to get further, like, it sounds like she's asking if you can do learning on your own, or if you need to pursue like traditional education to get, a degree or something like that in software engineering. What are your opinions?
My opinion is that you can do learning on your own. If you have an opportunity to participate in a certain project at, in the company where you work at, where you would be able to apply those skills, I think that would be the best sort of the hands-on experience. I think that's definitely sufficient enough. It looks like you are already in the software industry. Perhaps, if you start with maybe incorporating more automation. I don't know if you're a manual tester, if you're an automation tester, but if you do more automation, that sort of gets you a little closer with the engineering. But definitely, I've worked with plenty of self-taught software engineers that were awesome and great and did very well in their careers, for sure.
I agree with that. And again, I think just to kind of add to that, right? To me, when you're kind of trying to get into the software engineering field, whether it is from a different field or coming out of college or whatnot, right? My suggestion, at least the way I would kind of approach this, is try to dip your toes in the water before jumping full steam ahead. In other words, going back to what Bella was saying, try to go through boot camps, try to go through some online learning sessions to learn programming or computer science fundamentals or whatnot. See if that is going to pique your interest. Is that something that you want to do? If you are absolutely convinced, then you can go ahead and make the investment in terms of going through a more formal college degree program or a more stringent accreditation program, right? But there is enough resources out there and enough opportunities out there to kind of really get dip your toes and get a really good sense of what you might like and where you want to kind of focus on. Because we kind of talk about software engineering as a really broad aspect, but there are so many different aspects of software engineering, whether it is from a testing perspective, from a design perspective, from a front end, back end, database, you name it. Like the list can go on.
No, absolutely. Marilyn, I saw you're coming off mute. Do you have a question you'd like to ask? No, maybe not. Okay. So to keep us moving here, Marilyn, please feel free to interrupt me if you have a question you'd like to ask.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think I hit unmute by mistake, but it's really funny because I said that initially I was an unexpected engineer, and it's totally been on-the-job training. Because I originally started my current career as a technical writer, and I hadn't even finished an online certificate program. And I never did finish it, and I never needed it. And I actually was a liberal arts major.
Amazing.
So yeah, I've learned mostly through projects, and then, taught myself a few languages. So it's been pretty awesome.
That's fantastic, Madeline. That's great.
It's amazing.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it's really helpful and encouraging to hear from people who have done it in the non-traditional way. Because honestly, at least from the experience I have from sitting in on 3 to 5 of these a week, there are way more non-traditional people than there are people that have followed what used to be the kind of only route to get to these places, right? It was to go to school, get a degree, follow kind of the laid out path, but that's just not really the case anymore. So yeah, I think that's absolutely wonderful. We had a lot of questions around like more stuff about soft skills. So let's cover a couple more of those, and then we'll shift into some of the other topics we wanted to cover today, especially since we have less than 30 minutes left. This goes really fast. So let's talk a little bit about kind of ways that we can promote the use of soft skills in the workforce. This person wanted to know, how can we motivate employees to upskill themselves in these soft skills, especially concerning things like empathy or collaboration? I feel like this is one of those things where you hope that people come to the workforce as adults, but really, like, it kind of feels like an overgrown high school, right? It feels like people are still maybe kind of need that motivation to actually do the things that will benefit them. So how have you approached this in the past in ways of, like, motivating people to develop or even just start learning these soft skills?
Yeah, so I'll jump in first. So there are different coaching techniques that you could use, and you don't have to be sort of person's manager to sort of coach somebody, right? So that's another thing. You can definitely be empowered to give people feedback, and you can have conversations with the folks, with employees or your colleagues, and what I find and what I have done in the past is sort of framing the conversation sort of in a non-confrontational way, so they don't get defensive about this. But sort of, what worked well for me was sort of asking the person, about, let's say, certain situation. I would ask, like, how, do you feel that this was effective? Do you think your approach worked? Would you do something different? Would you do something different, if the similar situation happened again? And depending on their answers, that you can sort of unpack whatever has happened. Another thing that I actually found that works well for engineering teams as teams, not necessarily a person, because the team is an entity, right? The team behaves as well. The team sort of, right, interacts with other teams. The team has a certain reputation within organization as well. So what I have found that works well with engineering teams and for the relationships and behaviors within the team is utilizing, thankfully, you know, most of the software organizations use agile software development process. So what I found that worked very well on multiple occasions, including at Waters, was to use the framework of team retros and lessons learned as a method to have those conversations. And there are some very hot topics where people get very emotional. I think that's another sort of thing. You know, the best advice I've gotten from, you know, my coaches was, this is not personal, just stick to the facts. You know, so this is the best advice that you could give yourself at any point in time. But sometimes there are certain topics where people get very passionate about. I'm going to use this word. So, you know, just be sensitive to having a facilitator to lead those conversations, because sometimes it helps to have somebody that is sort of not in it to facilitate, to make sure that everybody has a voice, and letting teams to discuss and be sort of very open about what worked well and what didn't work well, not necessarily without saying, hey, why did you do it this way and not the other way? And I have found that that has been very effective tool to solving some of those. And, you know, just as a reminder and this is a good reminder for the team and to the people, you know, it is known in the industry that high performing teams, and it's not just true for software, it's true across, you know, every organization. High performing teams are built on trust. Building trust requires sort of some emotional intelligence. It takes practice and effort. So it does require some additional work to do. So definitely something to motivate everybody. If you want your team to be better, you need to invest in this.
Oh, for sure. Angie's in the chat saying, I never expected a technical career either. I fell into it as a non-traditional software engineer as well. Started with an MCSE 7 Microsoft Network Certification Skills, and then was actually hired for my communication skills. My manager never told me that. So in learning to survive, I learned to communicate like the rest of the team does. Any type of soft skills really needs to be supported by management or upper management. And she's even saying, like, I use soft skills and I'm coming off of a 2-year mental health break. So I completely am with you on this, Angie. Like, even just basic communication skills and kind of finding that way to, you know, like you said, Bella, like, clarify when something isn't personal, because it's okay to still be passionate about it. But if you can make it, if you can understand that it's not an attack on you personally and it's not confronting something about you, it's about how the team can work better together or how you can be more successful in the org, it really makes it a lot easier to you know, kind of either swallow negative feedback or work through it to find yourself in a more positive place.
Yeah,
Great. And again, to that point, right, like as a hiring manager, right, when I'm interviewing potential candidates for a role, right, it's not just about the technical skills that I need today. Because yes, that might solve the immediate problem. For me, if I'm trying to bring someone on board into the team, I'm kind of thinking about how can they actually grow in this role, help the organization. And it's not just about what you bring to the table today, but it's about the overall skills. If you're really good at building relationships, if you're really good at being able to pay attention to detail, if you're really good at communications, those are all really valuable skills that help the employee become overall successful. So I think, again, I would approach this as technical skills are only one side of the equation. The rest of the soft skills that we've been talking about, probably, again, if I were to be put in a corner or pushed into a corner, I would say they probably have a greater role in terms of whether you find a job or not versus your core technical skills.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, if all things being equal and you have all these people that have the same technical skills, do you want to work with the person who's a little bit easier to work with and seems to understand how to grow and how to work together as a team? Or, are you going to try and take a chance on someone who maybe comes off as prickly or doesn't really seem like they're interested in learning or growing? We had a chat yesterday about how curiosity is really the root of a lot of people's success, because if you are curious, you're asking questions. If you're not, you're assuming that you already know everything.
Exactly.
Which obviously goes directly, in the face of what we've been talking about, that idea of continuous learning. We have a lot of people that had questions about coming back after a break in employment. So I want to go to one of those questions before we move on to the servant leadership idea. This person said, what soft skills should I emphasize when interviewing for a software engineer position? I've been trying to get back to the workforce after homeschooling my children. And I think that it's important to address this both from a soft skills perspective, as well as like, what can you highlight about yourself or about your experience that would make you more appealing after a break?
Yeah, again, I'll try and take a stab at it, and Bella, you can chime in as well. First and foremost, homeschooling children is not easy. It is probably the most difficult job out there. And when you're thinking about homeschooling children, right, imagine all of the planning, organization, time management, relationship building that you're doing, empathy that you have for your kids or anyone supporting them, providing feedback. All of these skills are critical, not just for being a software engineer, but in any job. So think about, you already are halfway there in terms of some of those skills that you can actually bring to the table out of the gate. Like, even though you've kind of taken a break, but you've been honing your soft skills. And when you're kind of trying to get into an interview setting, and there are certain specific technical skills that you might not necessarily be on par with, be honest. Hey, not been there. So, but definitely based on some of my past experiences, some of these things, I can put in the effort, I can learn, I can get there, right? And to me, again, don't think of it as I have taken a break completely from my career. You've actually honed some really important skills while doing what you were doing. And technical skills are probably the more easier ones to learn than some of the skills that you've been practicing over the last a number of years, whatever that is.
Yeah, I mean, you can cram all you want to or be like the best student, but developing those soft skills, I mean, like, you're right. You develop them just from being a person who has to function in the world.
Yeah.
But it's also not one of those things that you can necessarily get a crash course in. You can start on the road to developing these things, but that experience comes with time.
Exactly.
And you're right. Like the skills that you develop when taking care of family, or even if you are caregiving or taking time off, like there's a couple people in the chat talking about taking time off for their mental health. I'm in that same position. I've been freelancing for my mental health for 8 months now. But it's one of those things that you're developing the ability to communicate better. You are taking a hard assessment of how you're functioning, and if you're able to complete something that, like Bella was talking about earlier, the idea of managing your time and knowing what you're capable of, so that you're not over promising and under delivering. These are all things that skills that you pick up, but you can't pick them up overnight. So exactly. Yeah, highlighting that is huge. All right. So as we get going, we want to talk a little bit about the servant leadership idea, right? So can each of you speak to what it means to be a servant leader, and how, maybe especially how you can serve if you're not in a leadership role? Because I feel like a lot of people that are on this call, they might not be in a leadership or a managerial capacity, but servant leadership is not just a thing for managers, right?
That's right.
Absolutely, Meg. So this is 100% correct. And everyone on this call has plenty of leadership skills, and everybody applies them daily, even we're not in the position of authority. And sometimes we don't think about it, but we do, like Hari was saying earlier with the homeschooling, which I admire, because I don't think I would have patience for that. To me, servant leadership means team first mentality. And It means building relationships based on trust with the team. It means listening, like Hari was saying, when we talked about the very first questions that we have. To me, it also means creating a safe space for everyone you interact with to voice their opinions and concerns, whether or not you are in a position of authority or not. So that's sort of what it means to me, and to building that organization that is based on those sort of premises, I think would result in a high performing organization.
Yeah, I agree. Hari, do you have anything that you'd like to add to this?
Sure. So to me, again, when I think about a servant leader, right, it's kind of quite simple from my perspective. The way I look at it is you're basically serving your team, whether as an individual contributor, a team member, or a manager, it doesn't matter, in whatever capacity that you can, to help them achieve their goals, right? So if you are, let's say, a Scrum Master, for example, your expectation is, job expectation is you are removing the impediments for the team so that they can actually work towards their targets. If you are an individual contributor, a software engineer who is part of a team, expectation is you're doing your part and also helping others do their part. And again, as we talked about earlier on, like leave things better than what you found them to be, right? And if you kind of start thinking about some of those aspects, to me, you're ultimately enabling and helping your team achieve their goals. And anyone who's doing that, to me, is a servant leader. And again, none of the things that I just talked about need you to be in a leadership role, right? So you can actually influence and chart your own course in terms of how you're thinking of helping your team, because there's a lot of articles out there, but at least from my perspective, it's very simple. What can I do in whatever capacity to help my team succeed?
No, I couldn't agree more. It's really, if you take it and turn it in that direction, it becomes a lot more clear what you need to do, as opposed to feeling like I don't know how to help, or I'm not quite sure how I could, be in a more effective position or make myself more effective within the group. When it comes to, the idea of servant leadership, we had a couple of questions of people asking about, ways to kind of highlight the importance of servant leadership, of soft skills, of communication skills, especially when they're dealing with either separate teams, like, across team functionality, or if they're dealing with, supervisors or somebody who is above them, within the hierarchy of the company. Are there any ways that we can both model this behavior and help, like, kind of further that with other people? Especially when it's not somebody that I don't want to say have control over, but somebody that you're directly supervising. Is there any way to really lead by the example there, or is that kind of beating your head against a wall?
So this is a very interesting question, right? So leading without authority, right? So, and everything that comes with that. I did have experience with that. And Waters actually has a lot of opportunity with that. And when we interview folks, we do look at leadership skills for all the technical staff, because for folks from certain, level from that are not people's managers, we do expect for them to be leaders without having direct reports. We do expect them to sort of work across the boundaries of their immediate teams, and some people in their positions work across the teams. And so that becomes extremely important on how you build reports with the groups, how you gain their trust, how do you build the relationships. It's difficult. It's not simple. You have to be self-aware. You have to have empathy. You have to have emotional intelligence. All the things that we were talking about in the last sort of 40 minutes or so, because without that, you are not going to think about your stakeholders. You are going to miss the groups that your decisions are going to be impacted by. You're not going to manage change. You're just going to sort of, think that you're there by yourself, while there is this whole group of people that there is this whole ecosystem that for it to operate well needs to be sort of included and looped in and asked, and the voices need to be heard and opinions need to be listened and risks need to be raised and so on and so forth, and it gets quite complex. So it definitely takes thoughtful approach. It definitely takes for people to reflect on how they operate, to reflect on how other people operate, to be adaptable, to be flexible, to sort of be aware of the perception of risks that others have, to be sort of not to react in some sort of spontaneous way. So, I don't know if I exactly answered your question, but that's sort of what I'm thinking about when you sort of talk about influence without authority.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great way to look at it. And actually, it leads in well with this other question that somebody just asked. Iris wanted to know, how do you find roles with companies or hiring managers who really value those skills? Because obviously, if you are able to kind of get in with a group or a company that really prioritizes these things, it's much easier than having to kind of fight that uphill battle. Are there any kind of ways to maybe assess this during the interview phase, or things to ask, things to not ask? Iris mentioned in her interviews that she's been mentioning working on her mental health issues during that resume gap, but maybe that's more of a deal breaker for these people than than highlighting those soft skills. I mean, I know how I handle this, but it's also, I come from a pretty resourced position where I can use that and say all right, well, I can use this kind of a litmus test. If I'm going to throw this out there and you're going to respond like kind of a jerk, then I probably don't want to work with you if at all possible. But that's also a very resource perspective. I have the freedom to say, no, I don't want to do that. So, are there any things that have stood out to you within within the interviewing process that you should look for or steer away from?
Sure. So again, I think that's a great question, Iris. And again, I would agree with Meg that if they think that you're working on your mental health issues is a deal breaker, then you should be happy that you're not working there. So to me, that's kind of probably the first deal breaker. That said, but I'm kind of looking at opportunities, right? There is definitely quite a few telltale signs in terms of how important organizations kind of consider some of these key aspects, like whether it is inclusivity, whether it is diversity, whether it is, ability to kind of influence without an authority role or whatnot. Organizations do emphasize and talk about what they're doing in terms of their different initiatives. To me, that's probably one way to kind of get a good sense. Again, not 100%, but at least a good sense of what kind of things that the organization is doing. So for example, here at Waters, we are big into inclusivity, big into diversity, and big, again, even it goes all the way to our CEO in terms of how he is kind of conveying that message to us as an organization, right? We are a diverse group, people with different backgrounds who are part of it, and people who are part of our interviewing panels actually go through some of these trainings in terms of how to actually work and converse with candidates as part of the interview process, so that you're really kind of emphasizing some of these key aspects that are core at the heart of the culture of the organization. So to me, it's doing your research on the organization, and obviously there would be some kind of basic litmus test that you could actually use as part of your interview process with the hiring manager themselves, in terms of how are they actually kind of behaving during the interview process, like what kind of responses are you getting. Like you could probably look at in terms of, for example, again, I have 3 kids, and 2 of them are like boys who are twins, close to 7 years old. And when I'm interviewing for a job, right, I basically told them, I cannot necessarily make it to meetings anytime before 8:30, for example, because I've got a daycare job, daddy care job in the morning. And I'll probably assess what the manager's reaction is to that ask, because if they say no, you have to be here, then guess what? This is not necessarily the right place. Whereas the manager comes back and says, you know what, understood. You're basically, it's work-life balance. You do what you need to do. That's a different message. So I think there are certain things that you can actually do as part of that interview process to kind of help get to the bottom and assess those situations.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something because I think it was a through line in both of your, both of your responses to this, is you're not only asking these questions to get a good answer, but you also need to listen to like how that answer is delivered. Do they understand, yes, absolutely, we support our employees' needs in this way, or we value a work-life integration, and here's how we, help kind of keep that going, or we keep that within our culture. Or are they more saying like, well, we don't really do that, or it's not really any of our concern, like, are they, is it something that they don't really seem to want to know about, or is it something that maybe they're looking to do more, more supportive, being more supportive, but they're just not sure how? I mean, in the past, I've even brought up like, oh, hey, like my last company had an EDP program, and it was, highlighted 3 times a year, and that was a big deal. Do you guys do anything similar? You can, especially if you're not comfortable, if it's something that you don't really want to like spill the tea about yourself, or you feel that it's something that might not benefit you, it's still okay to ask questions around these things. Just because it's a difficult subject to talk about, or it's just something personal that you don't want to share, that doesn't make it any less important to you. So yeah, super important to remember not only to ask these questions, but listen to how they're answered.
Again, one other point, just to make sure that we kind of are closing the loop. Again, during the interview process, it's not just about you trying to choose the company. They're also kind of trying to evaluate like the opposite, right? So it's always a two-way street in terms of how you're evaluating the company, the hiring manager, the team, and you absolutely have a upper hand. Just remember that during the interview process. So I know it's easier said than done, but when you're kind of going through that process, as long as you are able to kind of get yourself to convince and feel like you have the upper hand, it'll be just fine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. Job hunting is not really something anyone enjoys, and you can tell that because there's not really an extreme sports version of it. But just because like, and it's so tempting, especially with if you need to take a job at any port in a storm. We've all been there. I've been there at least 3 times in my career. So it is a thing, and it is powerful. But remember that yes, you're slogging through this and it sucks, but do you really want to take a job that you're pretty, like, you're kind of on the fence about whether or not that company is going to support you, and then find yourself having to either stick it out at a company you don't like for an amount of time to make it, presentable on your resume, or just be jumping right back into the job search and have to do it again? A little bit, it's kind of like learning any new skill, especially ones you're not maybe super keen on learning. A little bit more time on the forefront will help save you a lot of headache on the back. And again, I know it's a very resource position, a very resource way to look at it, but at the end of the day, it's your mental health. It should be just as important as your physical health.
Yeah, last thing you want to do is to end up in a toxic work environment that might derail your career altogether. So just like Hari, I absolutely agree with him. Just listen, check on Glassdoor. There are a lot of reviews for companies right now, so you can pick on sort of that as well. So
oh yeah, and any company that doesn't have Glassdoor reviews, especially if you're interviewing, ask to speak to someone at the company. Ask like, hey, could I chat with someone from this department, or is there anybody in the company that would like to speak to me about how the work-life balance works here? If they give you a bunch of names, awesome. If they only give you one, that might be more telling than giving you none at all. Because it's a lot easier to script somebody's response when they're the only person you're trying to cover, as opposed to, no, feel free, talk to, this whole department, here's LinkedIn information, blah, blah. Okay, so we did have a ton of questions to ask, and I'm so sorry we weren't able to get to everyone, but I hope we got to a lot of the high points that we wanted to mention today. What you're seeing on the screen now is some questions that we asked of Bella and Hari before today's session, talking a little bit about the company culture at Waters. The people being your favorite part of working at Waters is honestly, it's a really common thing. You know, like almost everybody that we talk to, that's their favorite part about their job, is the people that they work with. So obviously that's, you know, a huge component for a lot of us. Can we talk briefly about your top tips for someone who's interviewing with Waters?
Sure. So again, to me, be your authentic self. It can't necessarily be any more clearer than that, right? You want to bring your personality, you want to bring your skills, you want to bring yourself to the interview process and try and see if this is the right fit. And again, as I said, Waters as an organization is great in terms of inclusivity, from supporting diversity, different viewpoints. So I think you will fit right in. You will not necessarily again feel out at sea, right? The other aspect is we're not, as I mentioned earlier on, we're not just interviewing you for specific skill set that you have today and that you can fill the need. It's about what kind of experiences have you had in life, whether it is professional or personal, and how are you going to be able to bring those and apply them in your job on a day-to-day basis. Kind of be prepared to kind of talk about that. And lastly, again, I think, again, some of the soft skills that we have talked about, some of the projects that you might have worked on from a professional perspective, think about in terms of how you're going to articulate the impact of those. Like one of my favorite approaches when I'm kind of talking about in an interview is to kind of use the STAR approach, right? The situation, task, action, and what is the result. And as long as you can kind of anticipate some of those questions going into an interview and prepare and practice along those lines, it makes the conversation go way more smoothly. And again, to me, that's probably my pitch in terms of what are some of the things that I would probably suggest for people wanting to interview here at Waters, right? Or for that matter, anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Bella, did you have anything you'd like to add to this?
No, I think that's good. I see that we're a little over the time, so I want to be mindful of everything.
No, I didn't want to cut anybody off, but there was such like great stuff happening, so I wanted to be sure we got to it.
No, 100%. It's such a good question, such a good topic. So
really, y'all, these were great questions. Thank you to everyone who submitted them. Last thing I want to share here, I'm putting the link again in the thread. These are some of the roles that are open at the Waters Corporation right now. Like I said, they currently have 229 roles posted with Power to Fly. If you do apply via Power to Fly, that's great. Obviously, we love that. And it's you also have then an additional kind of safety measure of a person at Power to Fly following up with Waters about your application. If you do apply via Waters, that's fine. It's not going to do anything negative to your salary or your chances to get the job, anything like that. There's no difference between applying at Power to Fly or applying via Waters site in directly. But it's just, we like to tell people that we're sending people to Waters because that helps show that our community members are really great. You know, we have amazingly skilled people and we want to help you all find the fit for you. So absolutely pursue that. Take a look at these roles if they interest you. And like I said, please feel free to follow Waters on their company page, especially if this has interested you in the company, but there's nothing that suits you right now. I just want to say a huge thank you to Bella and Hari. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend with us. This was wonderful. And I really enjoyed spending the afternoon with both of you.
Right. Thank you. And this was great and appreciate the opportunity. And definitely looking forward to having some of you guys apply for positions here at Waters, and hopefully we get to work together.
Yeah, thank you so much for awesome questions. I threw in my LinkedIn profile. Feel free to connect to me, and if you have any questions or you would like to apply to any of the jobs that you see online, please reach out.
Thank you both for that. That's awesome. Huge thank you to our amazing attendees. Like I said, guys, these are great questions. Really great conversations are being had today. So thank you for the participation. I can't wait to see many more of you on more chats. Don't forget, next week is our June mini summit from the 8th to the 11th. We're focusing on Pride at work because obviously it's Pride Month, so we have to support our LGBTQ alphabet mafia. Thank you again, and I hope to see you on many more chats going forward. Have a great day, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.